Welcome to Drum Channel. Billy Amendola here. And today, my special guest is Zach Hanson from the group Hanson. Hey, Zach.
Hey, thanks for having me. Yeah.
Thank you for being here. I know you've been, you have a little bit of time off, but you guys never slow down, which is what I love about you.
Well, it's like we come from a family of farmers in Kansas. So we just, the land doesn't stop needing to be, cultivated. So as a band, I mean, you're just kind of, I think that's probably why we keep going year after year. We're also motivated towards the next thing, towards the next idea. I want to write another song. I want to do another project. It just kind of works to keep us focused on the future rather than whatever that current conflict or that thing you're going through at that moment that might be hard. You just you're looking forward over the horizon, kind of.
Yeah, no, that's a great thing because you don't rest on your laurels. And me and you, I mean, I know you were like a baby when the band first came out. And then how old were you when Bop came out back in the 90s? You were
so we wrote Bop when I was about 8, but it kind of got famous in about 97. So I would have been 12-ish, depending on the part of the year.
Right.
Which was,
I know.
Yeah, I mean, it's just unbelievable. It's unbelievable. I mean, I love everything we've done, but no band ever expects that kind of response. I mean, that kind of like worldwide phenomenon of a moment in time where everyone everywhere knows your song, whether they like it or don't like it. They know your song.
It definitely brainwashed everybody. And of course, with MTV being so popular at the time, I mean, it made you guys because you were three good looking brothers. The song was so catchy. It was on TV shows. It was everywhere. I mean, to this day, people, you just say bop and they go, oh, bop, and they start singing. That's a fantastic thing. So talking about your fame, I don't know if you remember this, but I came to see you guys because I loved that first album right off the bat.
Thank you.
Lucy and Weird, and was Where's the Love? Was that on?
Where's the Love is on there? Yeah, we wrote
that's to this day is one of my favorite songs.
Yeah.
Of all time, not just a Hanson song. I love everything you guys did, so I've been a fan since day one. But I think the first time you and I met, my son was a big fan as well at the time, and you were playing a Macy's, some kind of fashion show in the city for Macy's, and you must have been about 12, and I think my son was about maybe 6 or 7, and I was meeting you guys after the show, and I met with your dad. We had to go to the bus, which was down the block. And I thought I was in Beatlemania. I thought it was in A Hard Day's Night for a second, because all of a sudden, about 1,000 girls saw you guys come out and start walking down the block. And we were walking, I was talking to Dad, and I had to pick him up and hold him. And we all had to run to the bus, close the doors, and then
Yeah. And then the bus is shaking because they're outside screaming and hitting.
Yeah, they were banging at the window. Yeah. They were screaming. And you guys were just happy to say hello to me and to meet me as if nothing was going on. And I was like, wow, this is the real deal.
Yeah, I mean, it is really hard to explain that kind of a feeling and that experience. And then you're right. If you reach a point where that becomes normal, that's a whole nother kind of mind melt. But yeah, I mean, those first, particularly when our fans were that young, I mean, they're, around our ages. So I'm 36 now. So they're 12 or 14 or 16, right? And that energy is so visceral and sometimes violent and out of control. And you experience that as a band. I mean, I have a scar on my bicep right here from where I reached out to say hello to a fan in the audience, and they just grabbed me, pulled me all the way in, and I had to rip my arm out of the audience, and I came out with a huge gash in my arm just because they're we love you, we're gonna take you with us, we want to keep,
I want that arm.
Yeah, I like that arm. I'll have it.
I remember Ringo, not to drop names, but I remember Ringo telling me a story about them holding up the top of the car. And
oh my gosh, yeah,
because all the fans were on top of the car,
oh,
and they were all in the back, like afraid that it was going to collapse. And it was like, that's got to be pretty scary. And you being, young, it's kind of fun, but in retrospect, it's a little dangerous and scary.
no, it is. And for all the fun times, I mean, there's so many amazing moments, particularly with that sort of rocket to stardom early on. But there are some scary ones. I mean, once in a mall in New Jersey, like the whole security team is going, and they just lost my hand, and so you're in about 2,000 people, and then you can't move, and you fall over, and people are stepping on you. And I remember that was like a flash before your death. Like I'm seeing my whole life flash, and of course my life is very short because I'm like 12, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, it's over, my life's over. And then somebody, a security guard just came back and grabbed my shirt, and dragged me along the floor, out behind their feet. It's been a wild ride, and to still be able to do it and see so much, like, still the passion from fans after so many years. And now you're seeing, like, our fans are bringing their kids, like there's a second generation. Like, it's a wild thing. Kids that weren't even born when you started, that were a twinkle in somebody's eye somewhere, and now they like, I love your fourth record, or I love Umba because my mom always played it when I was a kid. They have their own story.
That's fantastic. Now that's great. And you guys never rested on your laurels. That's what made me, really a fan of the band, because number one, you wrote your own songs, and they were great songs. They weren't just throwaway songs. They were great pop songs. You worked with the great, the best producers. Of course, our good buddy Mark Hudson did that first record, and then he called me 2 years ago, I think it was, that he was doing a new album with you guys.
Yeah. No, we have another project we really want to do with Mark. There's so many great brother bands throughout history, but very few in current time that really can go back and like represent the Bee Gees and the Everly Brothers and all these like great bands. It's like, that'd be so fun to do with Mark, and he has such a great history of his own brother band, and his ear for great vocal parts is legendary.
Oh yeah, no, Mark is at the top of his game without a doubt. He could be a pain in the ass, Mark, but we love him.
Can be. I thought that's what it was written under his name, Mark Hudson, pain in your ass.
Let's go back though, because you, like, we were talking before, and I was telling you about this woman I know, Cara Golden, who's the CEO of Hint Water.
Right.
And that's flavored water. And she wrote this book called Undaunted, all about, her success. But she's been kind of successful starting with AOL, and then, going through that whole media surge. But she wrote this book, and people were always asking, she's an entrepreneur now. And people always said to her, well, how do you get to do what you do? And she just said, you fly the plane as it's being built.
Right.
So that pretty much sums up what you did.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's crazy to be where we are. And I think me even more than the other guys in band, Isaac Taylor, because every stage of my musical development has been broadcast and manufactured, for the world to buy and enjoy. Like, when you're in the kind of weird spot, you didn't have your kind of, I'm an apprentice and I'm coming up and now I'm ready, right, to be in front of the world. I'm 20 something, or right. You're coming into the world at 11, right? And everyone knows everything. And since that time, for 25 years, every song, every drum beat you learn, every instrument you pick up, you have the world watching you, almost in like this Truman Show kind of way, where it's always available. And I think, to me, that's made me really unprecious, right? You just go, hey man, I'm just going to go for it and not be afraid. And I think that's been a huge asset, but it can be a crazy feeling to be in that place, Yeah.
No, absolutely. Because mentally, physically, it's everything. You're growing as a person, and you're growing as a musician. So I remember back in the day, obviously you didn't get to play on the records, but who cares, because you co-wrote the songs and you sang, and you were one of the main band members, so it wasn't such a big thing. And there's always been studio musician on records, and you guys were singer-songwriters, so they always had the best musicians, singer-songwriters anyway. So when I came to see you play, you played the drums, and at that point you were playing the drums. I mean, recording, as we all know, is a little bit different than playing live, but eventually, of course, you played on the records afterwards, and to this day, and you became a really good drummer. So
thank you.
When you were like in the studio, did you watch, like, I know Abe Laboriel
well,
was on some of that stuff?
So we had, when we made our first record, Middle of Nowhere, it was sort of a shocker for us, because we didn't really have a great relationship with Steve Laroni, who produced most of that record. We had a great time with the Dust Brothers, and then we did most of the record with Steven, and it was hard because he was there to make a certain record, and we had grown up, making our own stuff, recording our own stuff in garages, and it was just very real, and it sounded like a band in a garage, right? And so it was a process, like learning to play to metronomes. Like I didn't play to a metronome at that point. And it was a struggle, to deal with that. I think I had the benefit of kind of the blinders that youth can give you, where you're just not overly focused on something that's not right in front of you. But, I look at it now. And so I think Abe would have been like 20, 18 when he recorded on that record. And that hit a spot for me where I'm like, I'm seeing a guy who's not that much older than I am. And then I had to copy, right? I had to learn everybody that played on that record. And so it was like, okay, now I've got to learn how to play you. And I was a good drummer for my age, but not a drummer that would play on pro records like that, like you're talking about. Lots of bands don't play on the records. Taylor Hawkins, the tragedy of that. Like, I watching interviews of him talking about not playing on the first Foo Fighters records because Dave was like, "You're not ready," and you just go,
Kenny Arnoff with John Mellencamp. He didn't play on the first record.
Right. It's this different skill. It's not about, you don't have the energy and the live moment and all that stuff. Everything's under a microscope, and if you can't play bar to bar matched, then you're not ready to do it. And unfortunately for me, I mean, I wasn't, but by that second record, I'd sort of gone, okay, I'm learning you. And I was playing about half the second record. And then since the third record, I mean, everything is me, for better or worse. It's something you gotta be a big enough, person to know that you'll have your time. I hadn't put in my 10,000 hours at that point, and you gotta learn.
And you practiced. I mean, you were dedicated. You wanted to play drums on it. I mean, that gave you determination to say, well, I'm going to do that. I can do that. So, you learned.
The hardest thing about that stuff to me is usually some of those conversations aren't as honest as they could be. They don't want to say it to you. And so, because they don't really want to have the argument. So I remember on Middle of Nowhere, I played all the drums. And then the engineer lost the tape, and you're like, guys, you didn't lose the tape. Let's just talk. Let's just talk about it, but
right.
I've never been a drummer's drummer. Like, to me, what the guitar plays against the drums is part of that rhythm section. I play piano on a lot of stuff, and that's a percussion instrument. And I think about that, how the drums play off of the piano. And so it's never been my baby. It's my joy. I love playing drums, but I know that everything is playing a role. And so you just play what you can.
Yeah. And as a singer-songwriter, you play for the song. So you understand what it's like to play for the song, because you're not going to play all these crazy fancy chops, because no one's going to buy your records except other drummers, and they don't buy other drummers' records.
Yeah. That's, man, there are some styles of music that really lend themselves so well to more complex drum beats. I mean, we grew up listening to mostly music from the 50s and 60s, right? and just sort of early rock and roll and pop records. And that stuff, everything is about how you feel, not about what you're playing, you know? And so like to me, there, when I sit down to play a new song, you're just waiting. You trying things. Then all of a sudden, like a jigsaw puzzle, you go, boop, oh, there it is. Yeah, that made the song better. Like it doesn't matter how many parts I'm playing. It's like, did I just make the chorus more dynamic, or did I make you like the rhythm that the singer is singing in the verse more because I hit my marks? It's the stuff that makes the songs just more
Mhm.
of a hit, you know, like it's just more of a hit.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And this is why I try to stress to drummers these days. Well, you know, because a lot of drummers didn't get credit for songwriting,
Yeah.
where they played certain beats that, you know, they made that song what it is. Because, you know, if you heard the demo and then you heard what the drummer added to it, it's night and day. But, you know, that's something that hopefully, you know, bands nowadays are learning, that, you know, and your generation and the younger generation, they played more than one instrument. So it's not as bad as it was. But like when I was growing up, you played one instrument and, you know, you focused on that one instrument.
Well, it's a hard thing. So we just finished a record that's coming out in May. It's called Red, Green, Blue, and it's three parts. It's I did 5 songs, Isaac did 5 songs, Taylor did 5 songs, and we haven't had producer partners on a lot of records. Mostly we've done our own. We worked with the Dust Brothers on first record. We ended up
Yeah.
really having a great relationship with Stephen Laroni later in our career. You know, I was talking about how we had hard times with him on that first record, but by the end of our second record, we were friends, and I love Steven. He's great, and he's a drummer, and I actually see his drummer brain as a producer now in my life. I'm like, oh, I know why he did things the way he did. You know, it was just Scottish versus Oklahoman. You know, you know, we do things a little different. But
And, you know, drummers do make really good producers. A lot of like Stan Lynch, a lot of guys go on, they, you know, they play drums and then they go on to become producers.
yeah, and I think there's a certain cutthroat quality to the way you play drums that allows you to listen. Like, you know, drums in and of themselves are an arrangement. I feel like more than some instruments where you're, what's my foot doing? What's my left hand and my right hand? Like this is a whole section in and of itself. Like you're filling in a whole section. So I think they have a tendency, that brain can be turned into an arranger, into somebody that's listening for all the parts and all the air. Where's there a spot for a hook? Where's there a spot for a guitar line or a vocal part, or where should we breathe? You know, I agree. Yeah, I think it's great. And some of my favorite producers that we worked with, including Jim Scott. You know, Jim Scott is not known for being a musician, but what he is in his history is a drummer. And like I found a real kinship working with him on this album. Just knowing that part of my brain and then seeing how it's reflected in him being an engineer and a drummer. Like, you know, it was it's something, it's special. It's a different kind of thing.
You can't get that kind of schooling. You know, that's
Yeah.
the best kind of schooling. And, you know, he's from Muscle Shoals, and, you know, he's worked with Roger Hawkins, and I mean, everybody, all the greats.
Yeah, no, Jim is such a, like, he has so much history. You know, he's got Grammys from every decade. He's got gold records lighting every wall, and he's so self confident. That's one of the beauties of working with somebody who's so established, is they're not proving anything. They've proved it time and time and time again. And so when he walks in and he goes, "Hey, I love what you did there," you know, he's not trying to press you. It's a genuine feeling, and he knows the difference between, you know, what a song is that becomes a hit, or an album that becomes a you know, a timeless record, because he's made them, right? He's made so many for so many people. You know, Chili Peppers and Tom Petty, and like it's just it's an epic list to be a part of. I call him a vibe guru to me. Like when to rest, when to go get a drink. Like, hey, you know, it's wine o'clock, but we could go 2 more takes. He's like, no, it's just time for a drink. We're gonna come back, and inevitably you come back 15 minutes later and play the best take of your life. You know,
Because, like you said, because he's successful and he has that he doesn't have to prove anything, as you said. It makes the session very relaxed, very comfortable. Like he's not saying, yelling at you guys, or some producers go in, they say, this is how it has to be.
Right,
You're not
right.
getting it. Get somebody else to play this part. Come on, we're wasting time. Nobody wants to do records or do a session like that. It's.
Yeah. The problem, of course, with music is that everything's relative, right? Everything is somebody's opinion. Literally the greatest song ever, and it'd be a complete flop because you released it on the wrong day and you weren't wearing the right hat, or you didn't, in our case, like Bop is an amazing song. I know that because I've seen how it's affected people, and they've told me their stories because it got to reach them. But if it wasn't released in 97 and it wasn't released by three brothers with long blonde hair, like would it have had a chance to make a mark? Probably
Right.
not. Like there's so many things. I mean, we came out of the grunge period. We were just on the end of that. And there was that mix of singer-songwriters. And, you've got like Alanis Morissette and Hootie and the Blowfish a few years earlier. And there's this mix of all these things that just allow you to have your moment. And you got to know that. You got to know that.
Right. And you guys were young, so that was a perfect song. It was like kind of a novelty song when it first came out, and then that could have been a one-hit wonder, but because you guys were good, serious songwriters, there were other songs on that album that said, okay, I have to pay attention to this band.
Well, thank you. Yeah. I mean, I think we have gone into everything we do thinking about a very long tail. Nothing that no one we've worked with or the songs we've written, it's never been very trendy. And that hasn't been probably to our financial benefit, but to our longevity and the spirit of who we are as people. Like you get to come in every day to the studio and go, I'm genuinely proud of all the choices we've made. Like even if it doesn't perfectly represent you, what you did 10 years ago or 20 years ago, right? You still are proud of it because they were made in the right way. Like John Popper from from Blues Traveler played on our second record. And I remember he came into the studio and he goes, you guys don't make lunchboxes. Don't you like money? What's your problem? Right? Right. And he's a funny guy. It was part joke, but part real. He's like,
right, marketing.
This is a moment, But we were sitting there as kids going, we don't want to be known for being a kids band. And kids use lunchboxes, not adults, not the people we aspire to be. They're, looking at it now, we probably should have made lunchboxes. I'm like, probably would have been a good idea. Like nobody cares. Nobody cares. But then it was really important to us to be taken seriously and to be making choices that adults make,
right.
Looking at your career as an artist, not like you're at the start and you're learning, but like you are there and you have realized your dream and now you're a custodian of it.
And you had challenges. I mean, three good-looking kids. That's a challenge because then people say, oh, it's a novelty song. They're three cute kids. People are going to hang their poster up for a year. They'll be flavor of the month, and then be gone. So I'm happy the way you guys, you were smart. You were very smart.
You can't help everything. The choices you make in producing something affect the genre you go into. And unfortunately, also your natural sound, right? Being 12. Changes the way people hear a song. Like if we released the song Weird now, people would hear it in a totally different way, right? It's all about sort of isolation and feeling other and different and kind of looking for your place and then recognizing everyone feels this. Even though I feel alone, everyone else feels alone too. Like you would hear it in such a different way. And you got to know that. I mean, like I'm a huge Bee Gees fan, right? I love the Bee Gees, but I also know, man, if somebody else did the Bee Gees, like you wouldn't even know it was a Bee Gees song because their voices, their style, that moment that they represent, disco and certain synthesizers and certain harmony sounds, like it's just
orchestra, playing with an orchestra, which you guys did.
Yeah. We did do that. Yeah, we did just a couple of years ago. We did a tour with symphonies, which was amazing, and that's probably a great example of hearing things in a different way. Like so that was about 22 songs we did for a show, all based on a narrative, right? And we used the lyrics from songs to build a narrative. And we put Bop in there in a moment, sort of represented that kind of realization that's the whole story of Mbop. And so when we played that, basically vocals with a 65-piece symphony, right? That song felt so rich and emotional and deep in a way that I hadn't heard it before until that moment. I knew what it was about, but it kind of made me go like, choke up, little tear, in a Mbop, they're gone. Most
absolutely.
people like, Mbop, woo woo,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one thing I want to say, the Dust Brothers, because at one point they were the guys, those two guys. Yeah. And have you spoken or heard from them? Because I have, they fell off the radar.
Right. Yeah. Mike and John, they were great. And a few years we stayed in touch, but we haven't really stayed connected with them. And they've kind of gone their own separate ways. They're not, the Dust Brothers anymore. But yeah, they were, they did particularly that Beck record right before us. And I think they were really on the forefront of that 90s moment where you were sampling old records and drum loops and putting it
they were forerunners.
Yeah, absolutely. And combining this sort of DJ sound with organic feelings that created that mix that became that late 90s pop rock moment, before it became synthesized pop records from Sweden, mixing beats and loops and non-organic with organic. We have so much scratching on that record and the drum loops underneath the actual live drum.
Right.
It creates this amazing rhythmic feel that you're only used to hearing in a club. And then all of a sudden it's all over the music you're listening to on the radio,
Yeah, no, they deserve that credit because they were definitely forerunners and, at that period. And then I always liked them. And then, they kind of just fell off the radar. Now, speaking of Beck, because they work, is that Dave Campbell who did the orchestra? Is that Beck's dad?
Yeah.
It is Beck. That was Beck's dad.
Yeah, it was. And he's a legend and his ears are amazing. He worked on every record that we've had strings on. David has been the arranger for. And so it was really cool to have him. Our relationship went back all the way to 96 when we were making Middle of Nowhere, and he arranged strings on, I Will Come to You. And then to have him helping us create the narrative for String Theory, which was the 2018 symphony record, it was beautiful because he had a deep relationship with who we were. We're not a band that has strings on every song, but he was that voice for us throughout the years. And he's another character that has, David is probably early 70s. And so he's just been through it. He's been through it, and such an even hand. We have a lot of history, but you still always need those voices that can kind of go, yep, okay, that's the next step. And that's the next step. And translating, our ideas. You'd come with all these ideas. What if it was this part? Or what if we turned the guitar part into a French horn? And he kind of go, oh yeah. And it was amazing. Yeah.
So he was like your George Martin.
yeah. He was like our David Campbell.
Well, yeah.
No, absolutely. He played that role in that process because it was a long process. It takes a while to write that much music for a symphony. I think a lot of bands that have done that, you have a tendency to just have the strings play chords. Right. And you're just doing everything you'd normally do. And what we wanted to do was take as much off as possible so that it was more of a feature and more of a statement of something different that really focused on the lyrics. Because it's a mix of songs people know, but also songs that were written for the project. And then honestly, a lot of deep cuts, songs that were B-sides and things that we chose because the story was right. When we talked about our own arc as a band, there's a point where we play a song called What Are We Fighting For? And it was about us fighting a few years earlier. Like, we really were fighting. That song really did come from a real moment, though nobody knew it. Nobody knew that song because it was just a B-side.
Yeah, no, yeah. Well, we've always spoke about that, working with family and, just working with anyone in a band. A band is a hard thing to keep together no matter what. And then, to be siblings and constantly be together, but you guys, I mean, I'm so proud of all of you. And let's go back, like influences.
Well, you talked a little bit about the records, early records, having to learn to play other people who were studio drummers on those first two records. It made me really admire Abel Boreal Jr. in particular as a drummer, and trying to copy some of the feel. He has so many more chops than I do, but there's a certain feel to the way he plays that I've always gone, man, I just want to embody that. Listening to Beatles and early Motown records, and I didn't know a lot of the drummers, but that's that's what we were listening to. Like you're later finding out, oh, this is Muscle Shoals sound, drummers, or this is Stax. Like I wasn't thinking of it that way because I was just a kid.
You were more into the music.
Well, I wasn't even at a point picking up a booklet and reading the credits, because when you're 8 years old, for me, I just wasn't interested in reading.
Right. Yeah, no, exactly. So you were just going by the music. Like it didn't matter who was playing the drums. It was the song and the music.
I realized, also drummers like Joey Kramer, who is a rock drummer. We listened to a lot of Aerosmith once Get a Grip came out. Like we were part of that generation of like, oh my gosh, who's this new band? And Joey Kramer is, for a rock drummer, he is influenced by an R&B drummer and in a lot of his records, where I'm like, where does that combo come from? But listen to tons of Aerosmith, listen to a lot of Spin Doctor.
Joey, before he was in Aerosmith, Joey was in a funk horn band, actually.
Yeah, well, you can hear it because that band, I mean, not to go too far, they wouldn't be successful without that sound.
Well, it's those. When it comes to bands, of course, the singer is always, that's the sound. But when it's a band, it's a sound that the whole band creates. And if you take one, there's certain bands, you can't take one or two guys out of that band because it's not that band. It's no longer that band.
I'm such a bad drummer's drummer. I mean, I love to play drums, but I just listen to the records. Yeah,
that's the best way to learn. That's the best way. And
I'm sitting here trying to think of the Spin Doctors drummer.
Aaron Combs.
Aaron Combs. He was an amazing drummer. I remember listening to those records and just thinking, damn, that's probably, those are people who they popped out enough that I remember thinking about trying to copy some of that, at least the energy of it. We don't, he was a busier drummer than I have been, but in a music style that it really served that band. It made it what it was. Like, it was more fun to listen to because he was a great drummer.
Absolutely. Shout out to Aaron. How do you prefer to record? Do you prefer to record on your own? Do you need a scratch vocal? Do you like to record it together, or is it different for different songs?
Well, I mean, in our band, I am almost always first. Most all the time, it would be a scratch vocal and a guitar or piano that's a scratch, and you are building the base of the songs for deciding where the holes are. That's my favorite way. I don't like to listen to other people when I'm thinking about really recording. I listen to the click. Like, there is a cowbell blaring in my head, and I am playing with that guy, because it's all built on top of the drums. And so I don't want to listen to a scratch guitar and go like, where's he playing? I'm like, no. I would go so far, if I could, probably to just play by myself, with no piano, with no singer, just because there's a certain purity, I think, to the way you play when you're just listening to the space between.
And also sometimes if there's a scratch part, it doesn't become what goes on the record, and then you might have did a fill in a certain spot, and then all of a sudden it doesn't work anymore.
Right. My brothers wouldn't like me to do that, but maybe the good part about playing with people and not letting myself do that is you don't fill all the space. You do know where it is. You do know where the bumpers are. You do know where like these are the dimensions. But number one thing I say to people who say, "Hey, I want to be a drummer," I'm like, just go home and play with a metronome. Just play all day, because if you're playing for yourself, like the better your time is, that's the difference, right? And if you're going to play for somebody else, you absolutely are going to be playing to perfect time, whether that's a track, whether that's live to Ableton on stage or wherever that is. Like you need to be friends with that clip. Like it needs to be your buddy.
So you do, but you do like to have a scratch vocal?
Well, just to know where you're going, sort of like
Right. Because I was going to say, because otherwise, then you got to do more homework. You have to really know the song. You have to know the song inside out.
Yeah, I mean, we have the advantage that we write the songs, right? So there are very few songs that I don't know, but in order to let yourself only think about drums, those scratches come in handy. I would not mind just hearing the drums if I could do it without having to think about 3, 2, 1, go, next part.
Right. Yeah, no, it works. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it because it works. Now, what kind of gear? What gear do you use?
Yeah, so for a bunch of years now, I've been playing for SJC. So they have great drums. I love their drums, and it's mostly maple kind of traditional sizing. Love 13-inch rack tom, 16-inch floor tom. I've gone to a 20-inch kick drum because I find that it's just easier to get from here to there. And most of the time, that difference, you don't hear a loss. Like the sound sonically is still full, but you get a couple extra inches where it's more enjoyable to go back and forth with a little less height. K's on the Zildjian cymbals, like dark K's, and they're just I just love that sound. It just feels very it's just bright enough, like but it doesn't get in the way, and that really works with a lot of the slightly R&B influenced stuff that we do. I think about Something or Get the Girl Back singles that we've released where you're doing a lot of ride work. It finds a place without overwhelming the track or the band because it's a thin, dark cymbal with just enough note,
Yeah, that's good. Whose sticks do you use?
ProMark sticks. Yeah, ProMark 2Bs. A lot of people, they'll pick up my sticks. They're like, why are you playing such thick sticks? That's probably another Abel Boreal thing. He plays huge sticks. I think sticks sound better when they're thicker, like a thicker guitar string or a thicker piano string. Like it resonates to my ear a little longer, a little truer. And so I've just tried to stay in that place of a larger stick because it seems to sound better than when I go to back to a 5A. I also think for my grip, we'll go with these. This has been a crazy period of not playing, but as a drummer, I'm not a daily practice guy, and so I'll go periods where I haven't played drums in a month, and I think the thicker stick to me puts a little less stress on my grip. I don't find I cramp or things as much as when I played smaller sticks, when I was having to squeeze so hard to try and I got to hold on to this thing because it's going to fall out. Like, it's there. It's beefy. It has weight. A lot of people early on, I had several people come up to me and say, hey, if you don't change the way you're drumming, you're going to end up with carpal tunnel and you're not going to be playing in your 20s. Truth is, I was also breaking a lot of sticks, and that was probably part of what they were saying. They're like, why are you hitting so hard? Why are you squeezing so hard?
What tips do you have for someone that, you've seen the industry change so much since you've been, so for our younger generation out there now, what's the best advice that you can give them right now, like business wise and drum wise?
Yeah, I mean,
I know Take Control because I was happy that you guys started your own label.
As an artist, as a drummer, so you talked a little bit about how drummers don't often get credit for writing, and I think as a drummer, if you're going into the world trying to be a drummer, you do need to think about the fact that you are a writer, right? When you are in a band and you're writing that drum beat, you should not only be consciously going, I'm writing a hook, right? Like 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover, that is the hook of the song, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
or Walk
We
This
got the
Way,
beat, we
right?
got the beat. Gina, the Go-Go's, we got the beat.
We got the beat, right? There are so many moments, but also, so that's what you do consciously. But when you join the band, you need to make a point of that. Hey, we're doing this together, because that's something you should be in that place. So much modern pop music, particularly, is about rhythm, and so you should be thinking about that part of your job. As a band, we started a label in 2004, 2003. We are self-managed, right? That's a natural thing to take as much control as you can. It's always an interesting point to do that earlier in your career, but I think not being afraid of the responsibility is a big deal, because you're going to have to work it every day, forever, right? The plane's being built. As a drummer, I mean, I talked about it earlier, playing to metronomes is just the way of things. So if you don't get comfortable with that, learn how to do that. Learn how to live in that world. And one other little thing I would say is learn how to operate Ableton. Learn how to operate the things you're going to play with, because it'll make you an asset for whoever you end up working for, whether it's yourself or somebody else, to be able to go, hey, I got it. I am the foundation, not only the drums, but I know how to play and operate all the tracks, because it's not that big of a thing for you to learn. You're used to multitasking, but it's a big thing for the rest of the band to just go, he's got it.
Right. Yeah. And always learn. You're still learning. It's a learning process. Once you think you know it all, no.
Yeah. Well, in 2018, when we played with symphonies, it was a constant process of being told to play quieter, because the symphony is not actually that loud. The drums are so loud. And I walked away from that tour more happy with the way I sound hitting a drum than ever in my life, because I was trying to figure out how to play with energy and good tone, but quietly, right? And I didn't even try to learn that. It was like people were yelling at me, the cellists and the double bass going like, hey, dude, could you quiet down? And so, yeah, you're going to learn whether you want to or not. It's best to embrace it and look at it as an opportunity.
Right. Well, you're a veteran in our industry now. You're accomplished. I mean, you guys sold millions and millions of records, played sold out tours for 20 more, 25 years or more. It's like, so you've done everything that could possibly done, and I'm so happy that you're still doing it. And you give back. You guys, I know you guys give back a lot. Absolutely. We just recently hooked up together to Rick Allen for the 12 Drummers Drumming with him and the Raven Foundation and Lauren Monroe. I mean, thank you for being part of that. That was a great thing.
Yeah, that was such an honor, to be in that little group of 12 plus drummers and kind of look around. And when you do have something to give back, like I not only is it just you want to, because you've been blessed with so much opportunity, but also it's a great foundation of what they're doing, trying to help veterans, trying to focus on PTSD and suicide, and realizing, I mean, it's a big issue that people are facing, especially in these last couple of years with so much isolation. I think it was even more important. And of course, I selfishly looked at the list of drummers as they were coming on, Chad Smith and Rick Allen. And like, I'm just going like, yeah, I want to be in a list that includes Joey Kramer, and I want to, like Cindy Blackman, like, I'm like, okay, yeah, you're going to get no qualms from me. I love that,
Yeah.
And it's scary to me to realize that actually I've been playing drums as long as some of those people that I've looked up to, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I don't feel worthy at all. But technically, from just a year's point of view, I'm like, yeah, yeah, the Red Hot Chili Peppers are about the same. Like it's not a whole lot different.
We were honored to have you because you did very well in the auction. You
Yeah.
raised a lot of money, man. It was like, thank you.
Well, I told them I'd love to see 12 drummers actually drumming. I want to see, I love that. Drummers, we're so often in the background, and that's really our job. But it's such a joy to see great drummers playing together. And what I find, I mean, is oftentimes when the drummers are willing to, you do get the Dave Grohls of the world, and you do get the Phil Collins of the world, where you kind of go, why were you keeping all of this from me? Like you're amazing. You're not just a drummer, you're an everything. And so like anytime that the spotlight turns to the drummer, I like to smile at it and enjoy it,
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Yeah, I got in a motorcycle wreck a few years ago.
Yeah, the dad in me, when I was reading about that, when I was doing my research, the dad in me was going, all right, he's got to stay off of anything that could really, because you got really hurt bad.
Yeah, no, I broke like 7 bones and I couldn't drum. I mean, I couldn't lift my arm because my collarbone was broken and my shoulder blade was broken and my ribs were broken.
Yeah.
But it was a joy because we did about 2 months later have to go on tour, and I just wasn't back, and so a good friend, Dash Hutton, who's a great drummer, he's director for Haim, and son of the famous Danny Hutton.
There you go, Three Dog Night.
Yeah, and so he came out and drummed for me, and I stood in the front of the stage and just sang, and it was like, I don't want to stop being a drummer, but I did realize like there's something special about that. I'm like these buttholes, it is so easy to just stand here and sing. Like, drummers have it so hard. We're just sweating and having to sing while and this guy's up here just do. Hey ladies.
Three great vocalists. I mean, Taylor, he was a great front man. Even I saw him at the Troubadour with tinted windows.
Yes.
And the late Adam. I mean,
Adam Schlesinger was such an amazing writer and producer, and such a tragedy to see him pass away these last couple of years.
That's he was unfortunately one of the first when COVID started that of somebody that I actually knew, and that was sad.
Yeah, nobody, Adam was also, he was really too young. It wasn't, it was just that combination of so many things that really brought that whole COVID experience to reality. Like, I don't care what you think. And I know everyone had their different experiences in, Oklahoma. We had a totally different experience than New York, but that was the first time where a friend, you saw a friend pass away and you go, wow, this is real. Whatever it is, it's real.
Yeah. Yeah, I knew Adam, and that for his family, that was tragic. So God bless him. And now losing Taylor, Hawkins. I mean, it's sad, and this is why we still do what we do, and we try to preach and tell people what's good and bad, and hopefully it gets through. And I just hope that, more people, if you need help, to just reach out to somebody if you need help, because, it's a scary world. Music makes it better, and we're here to change the world through music. So before we go, what's coming up for 2022 now?
Yeah. So June, we start a European tour. And so we'll be all over the place, about 20 countries, and then US after that, and South America. So we're going almost everywhere. So if you live somewhere in the world, you can come see Hanson this year. Brand new album, Red, Green, Blue is what it's called. And it's really 3 projects. It's 3 5-song projects led by each brother, which is kind of a cool thing to do. We think at this point in a career that's 30 years long, it's a solo project, but we're not doing it in a way that says we're breaking up. We're being different. We're doing it in a way that says, I love who Isaac is. and I just want to be a fan of Isaac and play on Isaac's record, right? And the same for each of us. And I hope it will allow people to really hear our band in new ways, not really about changing, but deepening how they've heard the songs over the last 2-3 decades. Our focus is there, and kind of celebrating 30 years of being a band, and finally getting back on the road after 2 years. And then the future is bright. The future is bright.
Yes, it is. And I thank you so much for taking this time to do this. Everyone, Zach Hanson, check out what they're doing. You could find them everywhere. And for the younger generation, listen to what he says, because he's done it all. He's a veteran now. He make, I feel old sometimes as it is. I still feel like a kid sometimes, but then when I look at him now, and I remember him like, him like yapping in my ear, and I'm going, and now he's got words of wisdom, and he's experienced. He's one of the greatest musicians, singer-songwriters in the world.
Thank you.
I'm really happy for you. I've always been.
Well, and congratulations on that Drum Channel. New home.
My new home. This is my new home.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome.
Thank you so much. Well, everyone, Billy Amendola from Drum Channel, Zach Hanson, thank you so much. And we'll see you next time on Drum Channel.